You are standing at the edge of a choice. The task is clear, the time is available, yet something inside you pulls the brake. Most people call this laziness. They treat it as a defect of character or a lack of discipline. But have you ever noticed how this resistance only appears when the work actually matters? It is a heavy, invisible wall that seems to materialize out of nowhere. We often assume we are fighting ourselves. We believe we are simply failing to move forward. But there is a specific mechanism behind this delay. It is not a malfunction of your will. It is a sophisticated response from your current identity. This friction is actually a compass pointing directly at a version of you that you aren't yet ready to meet. We have all felt that heavy, unexplainable stillness. You sit down to begin a project that excites you, yet your hand reaches for your phone instead. You know exactly what needs to be done, but the distance between your intention and your action feels like an ocean. This pattern appears more often than we realize. It shows up as a sudden need to clean the house, a sudden exhaustion, or a cloud of brain fog that descends the moment you open a specific document. Something strange happens in moments like these. We assume we are fighting a lack of energy. But if a friend called with an invitation to do something else, your energy would return instantly. This reveals a hidden contradiction. Why does the flow vanish only when we move toward our goals?
We often overlook the fact that this resistance is actually a highly calibrated signal. It suggests that what we call delay is not a void of action, but a very active internal standoff. Watch closely, because the mechanism behind this is far simpler than most people imagine. This is where the pattern becomes clear. We often experience life in two distinct modes. In the first mode, everything feels like a tailwind. You make a phone call and the right person answers. You have an idea and the resources appear. We usually dismiss this as a good day or a lucky streak. But then the second mode arrives. Suddenly, every door feels heavy. Simple tasks take twice as long. You push, but reality seems to push back. We tend to label this as bad luck or a lack of motivation, but the repetition suggests something deeper. Have you ever noticed how these shifts often occur right when you are about to make a significant change? The resistance isn't random. It follows you. It shows up in your hobbies, your career, and your personal growth with a strange consistency. Most people overlook this cycle, assuming life is simply a series of disconnected events. Yet, if you look closely, the friction always intensifies at the exact moment you attempt to cross a threshold. This is the strange consistency many people notice, and it reveals that we aren't just dealing with a mood, we are dealing with a structural boundary. This is where the experience begins to make sense.
We have been taught that procrastination is a battle of discipline. We believe we are simply failing to work hard enough, but the teaching reveals a different truth. Procrastination is not a lack of movement. It is a state of being in two places at once. You're attempting to take an action that belongs to a future version of yourself, while your current identity is still holding on to an old safety frequency. This reveals something important about how reality works. Your mind is not trying to be lazy. It is trying to protect the person you currently believe you are. To your ego, change feels like a threat to its survival. Therefore, when you move toward a task that would fundamentally change your life, your system creates resistance to keep you safe in the familiar. Suddenly, the pattern becomes easier to understand. You are not avoiding the work. You are avoiding the transformation that the work implies. This teaching is much simpler than we usually expect. The signal of resistance is not a wall to stop you. It is a mirror reflecting a belief that says, it is not safe to be that version of myself yet. This is the hidden rule behind the experience. Reality does not happen to you. It is a reflection of the frequency you are currently tuned to. Think of your consciousness as a radio. Every version of your life, the version where you are productive and the version where you are stuck, exists simultaneously as different stations. When you feel resistance, it is simply the sound of static. This static occurs because you are trying to hear the music of station A while your dial is still locked onto station B. This explains why the pattern behaves this way. The mechanism has been operating in your life the entire time, even if you never noticed it. When you decide to move toward a big goal, you are essentially trying to change the channel.
But if your underlying belief system is still set to the old frequency of "I am not enough" or "change is dangerous," the mechanism creates friction. It is like a navigation system that keeps recalculating back to your old home because you haven't fully committed to the new coordinates. Suddenly, the pattern makes sense. The delay you feel is just the time it takes for you to actually turn the dial. You aren't being blocked by the world. You are being held in place by a frequency mismatch. If the mechanism is so simple, why do we stay stuck? This is where many of us lose the signal. We have been conditioned to believe that life must be a struggle to be meaningful. We equate hard work with virtue and ease with laziness. Because of this, we often mistake our resistance for wisdom. We tell ourselves we are being responsible, practical, or cautious. This is the moment the inner voice begins to argue. It whispers that the task is too big, the timing isn't right, or that we aren't ready for the consequences of our own success. We confuse fear with logic.
How often do we talk ourselves out of something that felt right just because we couldn't see the finish line? When you ignore the signal of excitement in favor of safety, you are choosing the frequency of the person you used to be. The momentum disappears, and the friction returns. This is the moment excitement gets replaced by doubt, and we find ourselves cleaning the kitchen instead of writing the book. Have you ever noticed yourself doing this? If you've experienced these moments where logic silenced your drive, share your experience in the comments. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking it. To move through resistance, you do not need more willpower. You need a better navigation system. The formula is surprisingly simple, yet it requires a shift in how you prioritize your day. First, look at the options available to you right now. Identify the one that contains even the smallest spark of excitement. This is the signal we discussed earlier. Second, act on that excitement to the very best of your ability. You don't need a grand plan. You only need to take the next obvious step. Third, follow that path as far as you can until you can take it no further. This is where the navigation begins. The final and most vital step is to release any attachment to what the result should look like. If you insist that your excitement must lead to a specific paycheck or a specific reaction, you create a new frequency of control, which brings back the static.
This process works best when followed with curiosity rather than pressure. How different would a day feel if you followed the signal instead of the fear? This is how the shift in your reality actually starts. It is a moment-to-moment recalibration that aligns you with the version of yourself that is already in motion. If this perspective resonates with you, consider subscribing for more explorations like this. The change rarely starts with something dramatic. It begins in the gaps of your ordinary routine. Imagine you are working on a report that feels heavy and draining. Suddenly, a small curiosity about a completely different topic strikes you. Instead of dismissing it as a distraction, you decide to follow that signal for 10 minutes. You look up a specific article which mentions a name you haven't thought of in years. On a whim, you send that person a brief message. 2 hours later, they reply with exactly the insight you needed to finish your report in half the time. This is often how the shift begins. You may have already experienced similar moments without realizing their significance, dismissing them as mere coincidence. But in this scenario, the initial curiosity was the compass. By acting on it without demanding a specific result, you allowed the mechanism to reorganize your day. The signal usually appears in small moments, a book falling off a shelf, or a sudden urge to take a different street. How many times has a small decision changed the direction of your day?
When you stop forcing the outcome, the ordinary world begins to behave in extraordinary ways. This suggests something remarkable about the nature of experience. We often move through life believing that reality is a fixed, solid path we must navigate with effort, but suddenly the pattern reveals a deeper meaning. If resistance is a frequency mismatch, then your life is not a single timeline. It is a vast landscape of potential versions of yourself, all existing simultaneously. This changes the way we understand the experience of being stuck. You are not failing to reach a destination. You are simply lingering in a version of reality that you have outgrown. Could these signals be guiding us towards versions of ourselves we have not yet explored?
Every moment of excitement is a literal bridge to a parallel reality that already exists. You may already be standing at the threshold of this realization in your own life, feeling the pull towards a self that requires no struggle to exist. When you align with that signal, you aren't just getting things done, you are collapsing the distance between the person you are and the person you were always meant to be. The delay was never about the work, it was the time needed for you to realize that the door has been open the entire time. The struggle you have felt is not a sign of failure, it is simply the friction of a self that is ready to expand.
Perhaps the signal of excitement has been there all along, hiding behind the noise of who you thought you had to be. Sometimes the shift begins simply by noticing the moments when the air feels lighter and the work feels like play. As you move back into your day, you may begin noticing new patterns in the events that unfold around you. The signals may become clearer, and the resistance may lose its power once you recognize it for what it truly is. How might your reality change if you began listening to that quiet impulse more closely? The journey of awareness is subtle, but its implications are vast. And if this perspective resonates with you, the next chapter explores the fascinating way these signals continue to shape the architecture of your reality.